Hello and welcome to That Paranormal Show. As you may have read from the title, this video is covering something called an old hag attack. Now, these do have different names, and depending on where you are in the world, there's slightly different information and history and lore regarding it. But the main focus of this is that there's something sitting, or as sometimes called, riding on the victim's chest. And normally the victim is immobile. These normally happen at night, and they can be quite one of the more frightening things to do with the paranormal stories when you start reading about them. That can be for many reasons. In many cases, this happens when people suddenly wake up, normally at night, not always though, and they feel like there's something evil in the room watching them. Sometimes they'll see it, sometimes they'll just feel it. But the general sensation is that there's something sitting or riding on the chest. It renders them immobile. Whether they're immobile due to that or because they've woken up is open to a lot of debate. But the idea is that you're waking up and there's something sitting on your chest. You're unable to move and you just feel the pressure, and it can be quite scary and it can cause quite a lot of fright to people who have experienced this, and quite a few people do. Now, normally what happens with these is most people write it off as just waking up, bad dreams. But this is one of the things, much like vampires, that cross all countries, all continents. They're described all throughout history and even up to the modern world. And it's the same basic principles over and over again. And this has led many to believe that this is something just beyond what's going on in our minds psychologically, that this is something more supernatural, and there may be more forces at work than we understand. Sometimes people say they're witches, sometimes they're ghosts, demons. But the whole experience can be very frightening to the victims. It's a complete sense system, so although it's generally described as being paralyzed and a pressure on your chest, people can see things, hear things, smell things. It is accompanied by sometimes footsteps. People will see weird apparitions, shadows, glowing eyes, or even just feeling watched. And this can be very oppressive and make them feel very uncomfortable, along with the not being able to move. Obviously, that would cause quite a bit of fear to anyone. Now, the weight on the chest can sometimes be there straight away. Other times, it can slowly build up as if the thing is coming over onto them. And this can make difficulties in breathing, and that is quite a common symptom that's reported. And normally the case here is all your body sense telling the victim that this is something real. To you, it is real, and that it's very unusual. And because of the paralysis, normally because you've just woken up in many cases, it is very real to you as you're feeling it, and it can leave you with emotional scars and sometimes in many cases physical problems as well. Like the next day you can be very tired. It can obviously lead to stress and things like that, especially due to not having a good night's sleep, lack of sleep and everything like that. And in more serious cases it can lead to people becoming quite paranoid about it, especially where it happens over and over again. Now, it's interesting to note that in some cases where people have had this, they've been able to break this just by sometimes moving. In most cases, though, it goes after the point of losing consciousness, and this is where the whole psychology comes in, that it's just a psychological condition where you're waking up, where your mind is awake, your body's still asleep, and it's that limbo between it, basically. In most cases, people will have the same events going on and on, so I'll describe it generally the same way over and over. And again, this does cross all borders and areas where people report these things. When it comes to dealing with these types of problems, the hardest bit can be getting people to talk about it. It's a very emotional thing. It can cause people to get anxiety. It can cause, if it was to happen more severely or over a long time, obviously the break in sleep and the fear can cause things like depression, anxiety, panic disorders. So in those cases, if you're ever confronted with someone who's talking about this, you know, trying to explain it to you and they're obviously getting worked up and stuff, the first thing you should always do is recommend that they get, go see a doctor, get professional help, because this is the one area of the paranormal world that I'd say has the most risk to the victim. Obviously, there are other things like poltergeists that can throw things, and obviously that can physically hurt them, but this plays on a fear that is very primal, I believe, to humans, and that's to do with sleep and the lack of control that would happen and things like that. Because while you're awake, if you know there's a poltergeist, you can leave the premises. You know, you get those feelings, you think so something bad's going to happen, you leave. But in this case, people are waking up to this, and with that happening, obviously they're unable to control it. It's out of their control. Then you've got the whole disturbing of sleep, which has been proven to have detrimental effect onto people's physical health and mental health. So again, if encountering any reports about this, first thing to do is check the person is taking care of themselves in the respects of, you know, going to doctors, speaking to professionals about it, especially the psychological, even though they may just get told it's a psychological condition, there's nothing they can do about it. It is always advised to, help these people where possible down a professional route, so going to a psychologist. Now, this phenomena occurs to anyone of any age. It seems to happen more at night, as we speak about, normally when the victim is sleeping, but it can be daytime where people take daytime naps as well. It can sometimes happen as they're going to sleep, and this leads more to the psychological conditions where people can hear and see things just as they're going to sleep, and that's why they believe it's the same thing where someone's just waking up. So it's that same, again, principle where your mind's active, your body's asleep. That would also explain the paralysis as well. And sleep paralysis is the name given to the psychological condition where you wake up and you can't move. Now, when I say it's worldwide phenomena, I do mean this is worldwide. It's been documented since ancient times. It was in the 2nd century that it was one of the first major ones that it was described in the Encyclopedia of Ghosts and Spirits. Basically, some individuals suffered repeat attacks over a limited period of times, and others have it over years. But again, these are well documented all throughout history, all over the world. And it can be quite a terrifying thing, to be honest, when it comes to the data you can get. These people are going to be very upset about it. They're going to obviously want answers, and it's hard to provide some sort of answer about, how to stop it, how to deal with it and stuff because of the sheer nature of it. Now, moving on to the scientific explanation, because as you may know from my videos, I do like to rule out the science first before saying, yes, this is a ghost, this is paranormal, and I believe that should be the core of any research and investigation, is try and say what it isn't. Once you've ruled out what it isn't, then, it makes it more a solid case to go forward to them, especially the more extreme cases, so ghosts, demons, stuff like that. Now, the scientific name, as said, is called sleep paralysis. It's sometimes called isolated sleep paralysis. And the doctor's point of view from it says sleep paralysis occurs when the brain is in a transitional state between deep dreaming sleep, also known as REM or rapid eye movement, and being awake. So it's in that phase where you're half asleep, half awake. Now, during the REM sleep, the brain turns off all your body's functions, so we can't act out our dreams, otherwise we'd be kicking and everything like that. So we are paralyzed. And that is where the key lays for this, that sometimes when your brain doesn't fully switch off from those dreams, you're still paralyzed, but you're awake. So mentally you're awake, but your body hasn't caught up. Now, this does explain the frozen feeling and to a degree the hallucinations, as the doctors would say, associated with sleep paralysis. And there is quite a bit of research to back that up, that there is a medical condition that causes this. Now, the research also kind of indicates that this only really lasts for a few seconds to as long as a few minutes, but it can seem longer because you're in a dream state. And we've all had dreams where, you'd have spent a day somewhere, but it's only been an hour, or vice versa as well. And that's half of the explanation on the sleep paralysis of why it would seem like, it may be 10 minutes or it might be an hour or anything like that that could be causing this. And is pretty much what the science says about it in a very quick, descriptive way. I mean, there's a lot more research out there if you'd like to go out and do more research, and I'd highly recommend doing that. When it comes to reading the victims' reports, they can be a bit more chilling in the respects of understanding like human psychology and what you're going to get from that. They are quite personal. These people are describing things that are very personal to them, and it seems to be set differently from your normal ghost encounters or your poltergeist encounters. It's almost on the same level as some of the more in-depth alien abduction type stories that have come forward, where people are describing things that seem very real to them. They've got real emotions, and it seems, whether it's real or not, have long-lasting effects on them. And in many cases, especially with aliens and this does seem to have a long-lasting effect. Even the once where people have only had it once off, there seems to be an effect physically and psychologically for quite a while. And in some cases, this can happen more than once to people. This can be a recurring thing. For some people, it can be once a month, twice a month. Some people once a year, twice a year, and so on and so on. But it does seem to be something that's hard to explain and just go, yes, this, because there's science that says potentially that it is sleep paralysis. But when you start reading more about it and you start reading about this, again, what they call old hag attacks, you realize that there seems to be something more to exist. It does cross, every continent. It crosses all faiths, crosses all types of people, and more importantly, it crosses history. And the only other thing that I'm completely aware like this that does that is vampires and a few other things, but they seem to be the only other thing to this level of detail that seem to cross. We're not talking about the modern day vampires, obviously. We're talking about the vampires from actual history, and they're about the only thing that seem to cross it, as well as history and all manner of time. Going back to a few things regarding old hags, like I said, there's a few names for it: old hag, demon attacks, sleep paralysis, and all of that. There are also many theories onto what these are, and in some cases, a normal term that's called is an incubus succubus, which are demons that basically take energy from you. Now, they can sometimes just sit on your chest, take energy. Sometimes it's through other more adult means that they take the energy, and I'll let you do some more research on those. Some believe that these are witches that have turned into a spirit form and then are basically stealing people's life energy to kind of help empower themselves. Some people believe these are demons that are just attacking people for their life energies. And there's a whole theory out there about demons and energy, that demons can't stay in our realm, if you wish to call it that, without sustaining lots of energy from people. And this is part of how they get their energy, whereas ghosts seem to just stay here irrespective. And there's a lot of theories out there ranging on what these beings are and aren't. They do cross over to the whole ghost realm in the respects of that they're accompanied by the strange smells, sound of footsteps, the weird shadows, glowing eyes, half apparitions. Some people describe seeing the top half, bottom half of people, or only legs, or only arms, or only eyes, and that does cross into the whole ghost realm. The part about it being on the chest and stuff is what makes it more unique than just I woke up and saw a ghost. These are very precise bits of details where people are saying that it was a weight on their chests, that the thing sometimes was physically sitting on them, or they felt it sitting on them, or it was hovering over them, or leaning over them. In some cases, these can be described like most ghosts in all types of shapes and sizes. Again, what makes these ones a bit more easier to identify is the normally at night, so they're waking up to it. It's making breathing more difficult over time. The sense of dread. Some people describe feeling like they're dying. It's a lot of different information on how people react to these. But normally, this is where, to me, this all crosses over to the ghost because of the smells, the sounds, the footsteps approaching, and things like that. So it does lean more onto the ghost sides than potentially aliens. Now, in saying that, some people have had this and described aliens, greys and stuff, and reptilians and other aliens, but 99% of the ones that I've looked at are describing ghost-based, if that's a good phrase for it, ghost-related descriptions. So the smells, the apparitions, things, glowing eyes, things like that. Sometimes just the smoke that's kind of forming and coming towards them. Sometimes they will just stay in the distance, but they do just, yeah. When it comes to this stuff, there's a lot of information out there, and trying to collect it all into this video is not particularly easy. I mean, I'm only covering the very basic facts here. If you wanted a lot more information, there is so much information out there on the internet that, I would highly recommend that you go and read. Be prepared to get a lot of conflicting information. If we just stay to the facts, that helps a lot. So if we stick to the facts that this is something that's happening, it happens normally when people are asleep. It can happen to males, females, any age. You start to realize there seems to be something more than just what science is saying. Not that saying the science is wrong, because I'm sure in many cases that is an explanation, but this same recurring patterns are happening over and over, and then you think, okay, sleep paralysis. If it's the science answer, and we're all in our state of dreaming and waking up, you'd expect there to be a lot more a lot more variety in the what's being heard, what's being explained by people, what they see, because I don't know about you, but my dreams aren't of glowing eyes looking at me sitting on my chest. Whereas these seem very precise when you get past some of the more fluffier stories. They seem to be a bit more narrowed down to something, and that to me makes it a bit more compelling. That although science has got an answer for it, it's not quite 100% answer in explaining all the items that are going on there. And I just had my dog bark there. Don't worry about that. That's just my dog. Anyway, again, just go about reading about it. You will quickly see that. At least I would hope that you see that there's more to it than just sleep paralysis. Because once you read sleep paralysis, and I would recommend you do first take that as a look, so you understand the background, science of it, and the psychology. Then you go to the next level of reading about the stories, and you start bringing together all the information. You're going to see that they don't match up, and in some cases they match up very well, but in other cases there's something there. There's something that science isn't quite explaining, especially when it happens over and over. Again, what I was saying about dreams, I've never had the same dream twice, but these people are having the same basic dream per se over and over again, and that's a bit bizarre. When they're describing it with very little variation, it makes you wonder. But again, some people do have repetitive dreams. That's quite a common fact. So anyway, I'm going to leave that for now on this video. Like I said, it's a very basic introduction to something called old Hag attacks and sleep paralysis. You know, feel free to go research about it. Obviously, if you have any questions, comment on this video, or please like us on Facebook, and you can also comment on our Facebook page or message us through that if you don't want to be so open. I know some people aren't so happy about being open about these things, and that's fine. So if you message us through our Facebook or this video or on our Facebook page, which all the links will be in the description below, we'll always do our best to answer your questions. Thank you very much.